Okay, there it is, auto started again. I'm going to do where did that go? A quick talk about this John Brown and my approach to this kit. And then I'll talk about one or two little things at the end. Now, for comparison, this the King George V by Tamiya was a kit that I got quite cheaply and hence decided to build very quickly with almost zero attention to anything paint-wise, but to try and just see what I felt about the larger ship building. And right now it's got more dust and cobwebs on it than actual paint. And it sort of hasn't got attention since I finished the assembly, and it doesn't even have all the parts on the taller masts. I've left off specifically because of the difficulty of painting things afterwards. So it's not complete in its in its assembly, but very almost. Now, for comparison, there's the John Brown in the same scale, a bit more than half, so not, it's not a huge ship, but it's not a small ship either. And for further comparison, there is Russian destroyer Tashkent 1940. Now obviously destroyer sizes can differ quite a lot. I'm just going to put King George V down. Okay, that sort of puts you a little bit in the picture of where did I put that box? Of the nature of this kit. So the King George V was a lot of turret, a lot of small guns, primary and secondary turrets, anti-aircraft turrets, and superstructure, and then a bit of masts. We have the two cranes. Can't remember the proper name for them now. Well, actually, that's a good point. Do you call them derricks, or when they're at this level, these two here, they're actually called cranes? I don't know. You can tell me. And the funnels. So what I'm saying is the nature of parts was somewhat very, very specific. You have a smallish amount of superstructure. You have very obvious primary and secondary armament, and then you've got heaps of minor armament. This John Brown, and that's what I've been doing now, obviously has its bit of superstructure, but not very much. The deck is in three sections, one piece of which is on there, which is good in that no gluing is required, and that's given the strength for keeping everything together. And this will be waterline. They do give this bottom piece, but it's not really necessary to put that on unless there was, sort of a very flimsy bottom. But this is quite rigid enough. And then a heap of stuff which I can't just go de-spruing like I would normally on a bike or a car or a plane. I can de-sprue almost everything and know what it is. So here we have, you know, numerous sprues which I can at least reduce in size so that they're a little bit more manageable. But if I go de-spruing all of this stuff, some of them are obvious, you know, I mean, anchors are anchors, boats are boats, but many parts, a great many parts, I would not necessarily be able to identify from other similar ones, or I would spend a bit too much time digging through all of it, especially some of these guns actually. Well, this boat doesn't have a whole lot of guns, but I'm keeping a lot of it on the sprue, or at least what I'm trying to do is get obvious similar parts in areas. So unlike my batch painting where I can get everything that needs to be a particular color and get those parts ready for spraying, that's absolutely not what can happen here. So, you know, in one of the first things is sort of spraying the deck, getting the deck on, spraying the deck, getting your meager bits of superstructure, which is a small, well, there's a small section there. You can actually see it maybe a bit better here. There is a small section there and a small section there of a little bit of built-upness, but otherwise we really only have that middle part. So not a huge amount of superstructure. There's maybe a better idea. Then we've got these four. And then an absolute ton of other stuff. So look, if you sort of mentally blank out the superstructure parts and then focus on all of those little tiny extras, which they barely even, you know, when you look at that, you don't notice how much extra stuff is on there compared to that. A lot of derricks or cranes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, a huge number of these air funnels. Look at how many air funnels there are facing wind and out of wind. So venting lower areas, getting fresh air in and old air out. We've got the grates. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I can see, 7, 8 anti-aircraft guns, but that's not a major feature of this ship. And then just a lot of extra stuff. And so, you know, just looking at this huge collection of very tiny parts, I can't really touch anything and do any sort of batch spraying. I really have to do different to my usual method. Just slowly go by sequence and build up and spray, get the superstructure on, get the next biggest parts on, get the next biggest parts on, and slowly reduce this pile. But I do think this will be a very, very good looking model. And unlike just putting it somewhere on a shelf and it collecting years of dust like this one, and then really being in a bit of a problem situation, the ship needs a permanent display protection. I'd say primarily against the dust, to be honest, dust and insects. Now, another thing that I do with most of my models is clean all of the parts from the mold lines, but with the ship there are just so many parts and so many tiny parts that you can clean the connection point off, but cleaning the actual mold line around every single little piece, especially all of those small guns and stuff, is just not possible. That's sort of what I was doing on that King George V, is just trying to evaluate how much work and how much cleaning one could actually do. So you don't need to go to town cleaning all of the little mold lines on these parts, just the main connection to the tree. But a lot of it will be getting the correct character, which neither that picture or the side pictures or any of these pictures on this box actually gives. For that, you really have to you have to go and look at a whole lot of pictures of Liberty ships, and I guess a lot of them will be black and white, or there might be some color ones, and that's what I'd like to capture, unlike what has been captured here, which is essentially nothing. I was painting gray afterwards, which doesn't work. So, well, it doesn't work on a ship like that. Maybe on a small ship you can get away with spraying the whole thing afterwards and trying to tweak bits of detail. So I have another ship, the Indianapolis, which I was then treating completely differently to the King George V, since that's what I was busy trying to learn. And on the Indianapolis, which is sort of stopped being in progress a while back, but that's the approach I was taking, was spraying everything first. And to a degree, that's what's going to have to happen on this one. You get a vastly better quality of product, but of course you just have to be a little bit aware of where your glue lines are going to be. So you need to try and have the best sprayability, trying to get those minor little color variations on the ship, unlike this King George V, which is just blanket colored, which is completely incorrect. And so when we get to all of the small parts, they do need to be painted individually and I guess in minor batches before they get assembled. And that's sort of a lot of the research I need to do, is take a whole bunch of pictures and really look at what color features exist, what type of things get done in certain colors. Unlike this art piece, which has really just been handled in much the same way as I handled my King George V build, which is sort of do a painting and it's all really just the same thing. There's virtually no color variation there except a little bit of red on the top of the lifeboats. And of course I would like to do rust and streaking and all that sort of thing. Now does this hull have any detail? No, it's mostly just a flat hull. So I'll have a look at a lot of pictures, and that's sort of the approach now. I can start doing some pieces. I can get those large deck pieces on, so that I've got my main ship and main superstructure, and I can spray the deck, I can spray the hull, and in fact, to be honest, even just these three pieces just with those assembled, there's actually a huge amount of painting and weathering and finishing, such that when you start putting on all of the remaining stuff, nothing more needs to be done to that itself. That's all done. Deck coloration, rust lines, bilge lines running down off the side of the ship. There's so many of these little holes there where dirt would be running off. Anchor weathering and all of that sort of thing. So that's, I'm just realizing that as I'm speaking, that even with only the three parts done, or the 4 if I put on that red bottom piece. That's a huge advancement forward in the ship, even if it's, you know, like 1% of the parts count. And then it's the slow process of building and weathering the smaller things. Superstructures, obviously the first bits, and then getting to the smaller things like these vents. I don't know what the name is for those tubes, taking air down to the lower side and venting back up. And these ones up here, you know, at least that's one visible obvious thing. Ladders, guns would all be done in somewhat of a similar color scheme, but they've all got to be handled independently of each other. If you want that very good visual appeal, then don't just treat it as if it was one huge thing painted by one huge airbrush. It is a conglomeration of fittings of various items. This other one that I showed you is one that I obtained more recently. That's got a whole lot better artwork on the front. You get a lot more interesting idea from there, but still you'd have to do a lot of research. But this one isn't on the list of models to be done soon, but it's nice for comparison purposes. I have to even go and read up where this it's got a little bit of history here. Apparently it was somewhat more legendary than many of the other Russian ships. It was salvaged in 1944. And then demolished in 1945 because there was no value in keeping it. So it didn't make it past 1945, but did have somewhat of an interesting war career. So anyway, that's just a little bit on ships, which I hardly speak about, and my approach to how to start getting this mental picture of what I would do with the John Brown. I probably should pull out the Indianapolis at some stage, but not for the immediate future. Okay, that was just a quick one. I had a couple of other things that I said I'd talk about at the end. So the little Citroen, the Citroen Formula One and the leftover pieces. So remember, I'd been speaking about making some sort of interesting, weird little go-kart with this Formula One center driver's bucket, using 2 of the wheels. I could use 2 of the wheels from the Citroen, but the other wheels I actually want to, that's these parts over here, including the engine. And I think that's basically all I've got to use from the original kit to build that Citroen motorbike. That Citroen motorbike, which a guy built from his Citroen getting stranded in the desert. Oh, there are. I think there's a couple of parts that I could use. Now maybe I have to see, because that Citroen is such a simple model. No, maybe not. So I would have to make a number of the body parts. So the Citroen is becoming the Formula One Citroen. I'm busy just ensuring that the wheels will get on. Oh, there it is. That's what I was looking for. Oh, good. That'll help a lot. So that is the axles. That is the axles from the Citroen. And he used 2 of those on the creation of that motorbike. And that motorbike is well documented and still exists, and there's a lot of photos of it even running. So that's a very, very interesting little kit bash project to do with, since I have those parts and I happened to be, you know, breaking up a Citroen which didn't need them then. So building that bike up, which I'll find the name again. I'll have to collect a bit of technical information and start seeing what parts I need to build that. We've got the Formula One, and then we've got that little bucket which can also get wings on it, as I had said. This is the main Formula One engine and bits, which I'm quite keen to start fitting to that. I'm a little bit unsure of what to do about the nose section. Give me ideas for that nose. I was going to build, and probably still will build, a somewhat more glass front in a Blenheim style. But if you've got other ideas about what to do about the front of this thing, there is one weird idea that I had, which was, but it might look a bit too crazy, and that is to have nothing up front except the seats, some front seats like that, so that you've got this Formula One engine in the back, and just, you know, just this open air. You could put in 2 rows of seats there. Give me your thoughts. So yeah, out of this one kit bash scenario, we're going to make 3 kits. The biggest of which is the fitting of the Formula One engine into there. Making some weird little silly go-kart, which I could use a motorbike fairing on, since I have a motorbike fairing left for that. And the special motorbike. There was one other thing, which is the following. So on the GSX, and I have one of the last things to put on is the indicators and the 2 mirrors. This very tiny little mirror connection has to fit into there, and they've made the hole too big. But similar to the CB750F foot pegs. And that's really, you know, there's absolutely nothing holding that. You could put a blob of super glue down there and try and hold it at the right angle, but what I'm going to do, which I thought was worthy of just a little bit of talk, is stretch some sprue to the correct thickness to get into that hole. Of course, you have to brace it with your finger when you put it in, and put a little bit of glue on there, and then cut it off right at the top, and then drill into that once that's completely dry. So basically you're filling the hole with solid, good plastic. Re-drill the correct hole size to that tiny little bit at the end, making sure that you get the angle right. Otherwise you may have a good connection, but you don't have a good angle. And that's what I have to do to get those mirrors on. So, you know, sometimes on these motorbikes, many good things, but some weirdly bad things. So that's why I didn't really recommend this motorbike as a good starter one, but the CB750F, which is now not on this table right here. And the only reason that I don't list some of the later ones, when I say list, when I don't recommend some of the later ones, is you've just got, you know, about double the parts count and a lot more intricate work. So depending on, you know, how much motorbike you want to be building, that was my determination. of what to choose. That CX500 Turbo, which I built one of already and will build another one, is not too bad, but it's got some weird bad fit issues. So I think if you see that Honda CB1100R, which is number 8, only number 8 in that bike series, is actually a very good option. Maybe that's another one. Also, I don't think it's that easily available. So yeah, the smaller the number of the kit, the sort of simpler it was in Tamir's bike production history. And these later ones are absolutely brilliant, but you've got triple the parts count for a lot of them. Okay, happy modeling.